This is the review video for the first 6-week CBA. I apologize if some of these are a little blurry. I had to screenshot, so here we go. What kind of number is negative square root of 2? So if you type square root of 2 into your calculator, you would notice that the decimal goes on and on and on. It never ends, and it never repeats. And it's also negative, we see. So since the decimal does not repeat and does not terminate, it is irrational. What kind of number is 0? 0 is a rational number. Which of these expressions is true? Okay, so before we can even start this, we need to look at what we've got here. We have a whole number, and this sign means less than. So this 2 is less than this number, which is also less than 3. So I can't really compare because I don't know what the square root of 10 is right now. So before I compare, I have to find the square root of 10. But the answer for B here is 3 is less than the square root of 10, which is less than 4. So we basically just need to find what the square root of 10 is and see if that falls in between 2 and 3 or if it falls in between 3 and 4. So you can type in the square root of 10 on your calculator, and if you do that, you would find the square root of 10 is 3.16227, and it goes on and on because it's irrational. So would this number fall in between 2 and 3 or in between 3 and 4? So it is going to fall in between 3 and 4. Or it's kind of the same type question. Which of these expressions is true? We can tell all these whole numbers what those are, but we need to do the square root of 155. So the square root of 155, I can type into my calculator, and I can see that it's 12.449 and goes on and on and on. We also could do this another way and say the square root of 155 is between the square root of 144, which would be 12, and the square root of 169, which is 13. It falls in between 12 and 13 because it falls in between 144 and 169. So this is going to go in between 12 and 13, so my answer would be G. The next question, same type question, but this time I need to find the square root of 165. The square root of 165 is 12.845, and it goes on and on and on. So this time I have to look a little bit closer because I have some decimals in my answers. So is 12.845, does it fall in between 11.5 and 12? No, because 12.8 is bigger than 12, so it's not smaller than 12. So I know that one's not a good answer. Does 12.8 fall in between 12 and 12.5? No, because 12.8 is bigger than 12.5. Does it fall in between 12.5 and 13? Yes, because it's 12.5, 12.6, 12.7, 12.8, 12.9, and then 13. So 12.8 does fall in between these two numbers. Next is, what is the relationship between the square root of 3 and the square root of 6 divided by 2? So we need to solve what these are, and then we can figure out which one's greater or if they're the same. So the square root of 3 is 1.73. This actually means we find the square root of 6 and then we divide that by 2. And when you do that, we would get 1.2247, and it's one of those, it kind of goes on. So we compare these two numbers, and I know that 1.73 is bigger than 1.2 because both of them have a 1 as a whole number. So I look at my next value, which is the tenths place, and 7 is bigger than 2. So we know that this one is actually bigger. So that means that the square root of 3 is greater than the square root of 6 divided by 2. So my answer would be F. Number 7, between which pair of decimals does the square root of 13 fall? So the square root of 13, I would actually have to solve that by typing that in my calculator and figuring out what that is. And it is 3.6. And it kind of, actually I think it kind of has some more numbers after that. So I'm just going to double check. It's 3.60 and then it goes on. So it's going to fall in between 3.6 and 3.7. Question is, to the nearest tenth, what is the value of the square root of 5 cubed? So this one is a bit tricky because you have to know how to do 5 cubed and then take the square root of that answer. So 5 cubed would be 5 times 5 times 5, because this 3, the exponent of 3 right here, tells you have to multiply the base number by itself 3 times. So 5 times 5 times 5. So when we do that, we get 125, and then now we take the square root of that. And the square root of that is 11.18. So to the nearest tenth means we go right past the decimal, that's the tenths place. So I look next door, is this 5 or more? Yes it is, so since it's 5 or more, we raise this up to be a 2, so it would be 11.2. Some of you would like to know how to do this in the calculator, so you could actually do 5, and then there's the caret button, which is right above the division button. 5 caret 3, and then push enter, and that would be how you could get 125. And then you would need to actually do the square root of 125. Number 9, these are like my favorite kind because we actually do algebra, and algebra is super fun. So I like to rewrite my problem because I need a little bit more space than what they gave me. So I rewrite my problem. I draw my line down my equal sign. I box in my variables, and I make sure I include the signs with them. So I know there's nothing in front of this y, so that means that there's a whole number 1 there. And there's no sign in front, so I know it's positive 1. So I look on both sides, and I see that I have a y on both sides, and my goal is to get the y on one side and the numbers on the other. It doesn't really matter which way I go. Like if I want my y's on my left and my numbers on my right, that's great. But I like to see which side has a bigger y. Well, this side is actually a bigger y because it's a positive 1, which is bigger than negative 2. So I'm going to decide to put my y's over here and my numbers over here. So if I want my y's on the right side, I need to move this to join the y's on the other side so that I can combine like terms. So in order to move this negative 2y, this entire square I want to move. So it's a rectangle, but okay. So this entire thing I want to move. So to move it, I have to do the opposite operation. So I have to add 2y. And this cancels. So what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. And you notice that I'm adding it to the 1y because I can only add y's with y's. I can't add this to the 5 because this has a y and that doesn't. So now I'm going to bring down my positive 1 because I haven't done anything with it yet. I'm going to go ahead and add, I had 1y and I'm adding 2 more, so now I have 3y minus 5. I like to just bring down my equal sign. This line is my equal sign, just so you know. Alright, so now I have this minus 5 or negative 5 on the right hand side, but we said earlier I want my numbers over here. So I need to move it. So the way I move it is plus 5 because it's the opposite operation. So this cancels. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So now I'm left with 6 equals 3y. So my last thing is I need to get rid of this coefficient in front of the y, so the number in front of the y. When this 3 is right next to the y, that means multiply. So in order to move this 3, I have to do the opposite operation from multiply, which is divide. So I divide by 3 on this side. That cancels out and makes a 1 because 3 divided by 3 is 1. But what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So 6 divided by 3 is 2. And then I just have 1y left. So y equals 2. So on our actual answer choices, we like to see if that's an actual answer choice. And for some reason my paper won't move anymore, but yes, it is an answer choice and it's C. I can always check my answer, so I could actually replace the y's with 2 and make sure that it works. So I'm going to do that over here in this side. So negative 2 times 2, because these are next to each other, so that means multiply, plus 1 equals 2 minus 5. So now I'm going to solve. Negative 2 times 2 is 4. 4 plus 1 equals to, it's negative 4, watch out, minus 5. Negative 4 plus 1 is negative 3. 2 minus 5 is negative 3. So since I got negative 3 equals negative 3, then I know I was correct in this one solution for that equation. The next one, and it says the ages in years of Sharice's family members are shown. What is the mean absolute deviation of the data set? So this is what we've been working on most recently. So in order to do that, first we find the mean of the data. Second, we find the difference of each point from the mean, and then we need to make sure that's absolute value of that difference. And then third, we find the MAD by finding the mean of the differences. So I'm going to rewrite and make myself a little table because I think that is helpful. And so I'm going to go ahead and add these numbers up. And whenever I do, I can always double check myself after I add it on the calculator and make sure I get it right. So whenever I added, I got 367. Then I know there are 10 numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I'm going to divide by 10. So my mean is 36.7. So now I'm going to actually subtract 36.7 from each one. So minus 36.7 from each one. And I remember that no matter what answer I get, because I'm doing the absolute value, it's going to be the positive version of that number. So when I subtract, I get 34.7, 31.7, 18.7, 16.7, 5.7, 8.3, 39.3, 17.3, 2.7, and 45.3. So, now after all those subtractions, we're still not done. We just did step number 2. Now I actually need to find the MAD by finding the mean of these differences that I just found. So to find the mean of these, I just add these together and divide by 10. So when I add them together, I get 220.4. I'm going to divide by 10, and so I'm going to get 22.04. So I look up at my answers to see if that's an answer choice, and it is. It's F, so I did it right. If I didn't have my answer choice there, I would just restart over, start with the mean and make sure that I did it right, and then go from there. We're going to put these numbers in the correct spot on the Venn diagram. So this is where that foldable that we made in class could come in handy if you want. -3 2/3 It's a negative number, so a lot of you just automatically want to put it in integers. However, integers are only positive and negative whole numbers. So since it has a fraction with it, it's a mixed number, it's actually going to go under rational numbers. So it's negative 3 2/3 goes rational. So we're done with that one. 387 is just a large whole number, so it's going to go in whole numbers. Square root of 7, if you actually work that out, which you would need to decide what kind of number it is. The square root of 7 is a decimal that goes on and never ends and never repeats. So that's an irrational number. Negative 16/4. So 16 divided by 4 is 4. So this is really negative 4. So it's a negative whole number. So that's going to be an integer. When I write it in here, though, I'm going to write it as negative 16/4 because that's what the problem had. And then my last one is square root of 25. A lot of you automatically see that square root and you're like, oh, it's irrational. But that's not true, because when you actually solve the square root of 25, it is the whole number 5. So it goes under whole numbers as the square root of 25. The next question is number 12, and it says that a small dust particle has a diameter of this many inches. Most cells have diameters of this many inches. Which is larger? Well, right now I can't compare because one is in standard notation. Remember, this is called standard notation, and this one's in scientific. So in order to compare, I need to have them both in standard. So I already know the first one was 0.004 because that's just what it told me right in the problem. So now I have to change 4 times 10 to the negative 4 to standard notation. So negative exponent tells me that the number is going to be less than 1. Remember, if I have a negative exponent, it makes me think if I had a negative number in my bank account, that's a bad deal. So if I had a tiny, tiny number less than 1, that would be a bad deal. So I'm going to start with my decimal point here in the back, because even though it's not written right there, that's where the decimal is hanging out. So it's back here in the back, and we're going to move 4 times to the left. So 1, 2, 3, 4. We moved the decimal, so the decimal is no longer back here. It's now right here, and I have to fill these in, all my dips, with zeros. So now I have the two numbers. I need to see which one's greater. So I'm going to line up the decimals, and I'm going to compare them. I feel like a lot of you automatically choose this one because it's longer, so you think it's bigger. But let's actually line the decimals up and see. We have zeros together, so that one doesn't really help us. We look at the next zeros together, that doesn't help us. 4 or 0, which one's bigger? 4 is bigger than 0, so this number is bigger. So I would say the dust particle is larger. It says justify your answer. Well, for me, justifying your answer is this work right here we just showed. So that's pretty much how you can justify yourself. 13, we're going to order these from least to greatest. But before I can put them in order, I have to see what they actually are. I can't compare some of these numbers how they are right now because some are decimals, some are fractions, some are square roots. So I'm going to do the square root of 36, and it's 38, sorry. Square root of 38, and I'm going to choose to round to probably the hundredths place just to save myself a little bit, because it's like when you do this in the calculator, this one is 6.164, so I'm going to round to here, so this is not 5 or more, so I'm just going to drop it off. 6 is already a whole number, so now I just have to do 32 divided by 5, which we're going to get 6.4. And then this one's already a decimal. So now I'm going to line up the decimals. 6.16, 6, but there's no decimal in 6, so the decimal is hanging out at the back, and I could add zeros on after that. Then I have 6.4 and 6.1. So now I'm going to actually compare my numbers. All the whole numbers are the same, so that doesn't really help me, so I look at the next number. So it says least to greatest, so I'm looking for the smallest number out of these four. So my smallest is 0. So I'm going to go ahead and say 6.0 is my least. So I'm done with that one. Next, I look again at the tenths place, and I see I have a 1 and I have a 1. So these are tied. But I already know this 6.4 is my biggest, so I'm just going to write it over here like 6.4. So done with that one. So now all I have left to do is compare 6, but then there's nothing here to compare to. So I know I can add that placeholder 0. So this one is actually less than this one because 0 is less than 6. So it would be 6.10 and 6.16. But this is not a correct answer because we need to change these back to be an original form. So 6.0 was originally 6, 6.10 was originally 6.1, 6.16 was square root of 38, and 6.4 was 32 over 5. So now we're in original form, so we're good. Next one, write a real world situation. These are probably the hardest for some people, so I'll just tell you my real world situation. So I like to always think about money, and whenever I see that there's multiplication involved, I think about money per hour. So let's just say Joyce babysits and charges $8 per hour. Plus an additional $12 for, we'll say, bus fare. She has to take a bus to get to the place she's babysitting. So what I just said was this right here. Joyce charged $8 an hour plus $12. The $12 is a one-time, like each time she babysits, she gets that extra $12. So now I have to look at the other side of the equal sign. So it's going to be about someone else. So we'll just say Tammy. Tammy babysits for $12 per hour. She doesn't charge any extra additional fees because there's nothing after that 12x. So because those are equal, my actual word problem would be like find the number of hours they have to work to make the same amount. Okay. 15, write a real world problem that could be modeled by that equation. So absolutely you can do that now. Try that one kind of on your own. And then we're going to solve it. So I'm actually going to spend my time solving it. So I'm going to scoot this up a little bit and rewrite it. So 100 minus 5x equals 40 plus x. So my first step is draw my line. Second, I box in my variables. And notice again, I boxed in this with the 5x because it goes with it. So now I like to look at it and see, okay, I have a variable on both sides. I need to combine my like terms. So in order to combine them, I'm going to have to move one to the other side of the equal sign. So I like to see which of these is bigger. This is actually bigger even though this is a 1x because it's a positive 1x, which is bigger than a negative 5x. So I'm going to put my x's over here and my numbers over here. So I need to move this minus 5x, so I'm going to add 5x, and that cancels. But what I do to one side, I have to do to the other side. So I haven't done anything with the 100, so I bring it down. I haven't done anything with the 40, so I bring it down. And then I add this up and I get 6x. And it's a positive 6x, so I bring the plus down. Positive 6x. Now I see I have the 100 here and the 40 here. And I really want this 40 to go be with the 100 because I want the numbers on the left side. So right now it's a positive 40, so I'm going to subtract 40 from both sides. This cancels. So this is left with 60 equals, and I bring down 6x. So last I see, I still have this 6 hanging out with the x. Right next to each other means multiply, so I need to do the opposite, which is divide. So I'm going to divide by 6, and I'm going to get 10 equals x. And I absolutely could put that back in and check it. Is another just solving equations. So I'm going to draw my line down, box in my variables, which in this case is g. 2g's bigger, so I'm going to bring my g's over here, my numbers over here. So to move this g from the left side, it's a 1g. I need to subtract 1g. What I do to one side, I'm going to do to the other. So I bring down my negative 4. I'm left with 1g plus 6 because I just bring that plus 6 down because I didn't do anything with it. Now I need to move this 6 to the other side. So I'm going to subtract 6 from both sides. This cancels. So I get negative 10 equals 1g. So g equals negative 10. Last one. Well, it's not the last one, but on this little screen. I have all these fractions. So, here's what I do first. I look at my denominators. So, I've got 8, 12, 4, and 3. 8, 12, 4, and 3. And I need to find the least common multiple that they have. So, I know it's 8, 16, 24, goes on and on, right? Then I have 12, 24. So far 24 is in common. So we'll see if 4 can get to 24. So 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24. Yes, it got there. So maybe now 3 can get to 24, and that would be my least common multiple. So 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24. So yes, we were able to get there. So my least common multiple is 24. That means I need to multiply everything by 24. So I'm going to rewrite 24 times 7 over 8 plus 24 times 2a over 12 equals 24 times 3a over 4 plus 24 times 1/3. Be really careful with the a's because they kind of can look like 9s if you write sloppy like I did. So now I'm going to see what I can cancel out. Any whole number is over 1, so I just added that in. So I look across this direction to see if I can cross cancel, which is really just reducing fractions across. So I know that 8 can go into 24 3 times. 8 goes into 8 one time. So I'm left with 3 and 7. And I'm multiplying, so 3 times 7 is 21. Next one, I know 12 can go into 24 2 times. 12 goes into 12 once. 2 times 2a is 4a. And this is a plus in between, so this is a plus in between. Then I bring down my equals. I know that 4 can go into 24 6 times. This is an A. I just confused myself because I thought it was a 39, but it's a 3A. So 6 times 3A is 18A. Then I bring down my plus. I know 3 goes into 24. 8 times. Yeah, 8 times. 8 times 1 is 8. Alright, so now that I have all whole numbers, it makes it way easier for me. So now I just solve like I've been solving. So I'm going to box in my A's. And so we're going to see this side's bigger, so my A's over here, my number's over here. So I'm going to subtract 4A to move it. Subtract 4A over here. So I have 21 equals 14A plus 8. So I just brought down the 21 and brought down the 8. Now I need to move the 8, so I subtract 8 because I have to do the opposite operation. So I get 14A. Sorry, I messed up my 14. 14A. Now I just have to subtract. So I'm going to have to borrow, and I get 13. So now I have to divide by 14. These cancel, so A is equal to 13 over 14. So that's going to freak some of you out because you're like, I got a fraction as my answer, but it's okay because we can have fractions as answers. It is 18. So again, first thing I notice is that we have some fractions. So I'm going to do the least common multiple. It makes it really easy. They're both 3, so my least common multiple is 3. So I'm going to multiply everything times 3. Okay, so then I can cross cancel the 3's and make those 1's in those two situations. So I'm left with A plus A plus 3, because 3 times 1, equals 3A plus 6. So I draw my line down, I box in my A's, and I notice I can go ahead and actually combine these two A's together. They're already on the same side. So this is called combining like terms. I have 1A and 1A, so now I have 2A plus 3 equals 3A plus 6. So now when I rebox, like the shoes, when I rebox in my A's, the right side, my A's are bigger, so I'm going to put my A's over here and my numbers over here. So to move this, I subtract 2A. I subtract 2A from the other side, because what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So I get 3 equals 1A plus 6. Now I have to move this positive 6, so I need to subtract it. So I get 1A equals negative 3. So A equals negative 3. Next. So I have some fractions again. I'm going to blow this up just a little bit. Since I have those fractions, I'm going to find the least common multiple. So my least common multiple of 8, 11, and 4. So I know that since I have 11 involved, I only have 11, 22, 33, 44, 55, 66, 77, and 88 to work with. So out of all those numbers, the only number that 8 can go into evenly is 88. So my least common multiple is 88. So I'm going to multiply everything by 88. So I have to rewrite it like this. Make sure you multiply the 88 through everything. So now I'm going to see what I can cross cancel. So I know 8 can go into 88 11 times. So I know 11 can go into 88 8 times. So it's the same right here. 11 goes into 88 8 times. 4 goes into 88 22 times. So now when I multiply, I know that all my bottom numbers are 1, so they're going to get whole numbers. 11 times 5 is 55. 8 times 6a is 48a. This is 56a, because 8 times 7. And this is 66. So now I have whole numbers. I draw my line, box in my a's. My right side has more a's, a bigger a, so I'm going to go that way. So I'm going to subtract 48a. This cancels, so I have 55 equals. Then I have to subtract, so I get a borrow, and I get 8a plus 66. Now I'm going to subtract 66 from both sides. I'm running out of space, so I get 8a, and I'm going to get negative 11. So now, because I ran out of space, I'm just going to rewrite this up here. I have negative 11 equals 8a. I would divide by 8, so I get negative 11 over 8. I can change that by saying 8 can go into 11 one time, with 3 remaining. So I could do a equals negative 1 3/8, or I could leave it as that. Either way. Next question, I have to read this, and I need to find the equation and then solve it. A public beach in Florida charges non-residents $8 per day, so $8 per day for a fishing license and $2.50 per day for live bait. Florida residents pay an annual fee of $114 plus $1 per day for live bait. How many days must both a resident and non-resident use the beach in 1 year so that they both pay the same amount? So, we're going to set it up. So I'm going to have the non-resident would be $8, and then it was $2.50, $8 per day, and $2.50 per day for live bait. So this is non-residents. Whereas Florida residents, they pay $114 plus $1 per day. So now I have my equation, and x stands for days in this. So I have 8x, I have positive 2x, and I have 1x. Well, I can see that these are on the same side, so I can go ahead and combine them. So 8x plus 250 would be 1050x equals 114 plus 1x. Obviously, when I box this in, I see that my left side has bigger x's, so I'm going to leave my x's over there. So I need to move this positive 1x by subtracting it. So I get 950x equals 114. Now, I need to move the 950 to the other side. Well, it's right next to the x, so that means multiply. So the opposite is going to be divide by 950, divide by 950. And when you do, you get the x equals 12. So it would be 12 days. Next one, we're going to write the equation, and then I think we're going to solve it, if I remember correctly. So here we go. 1 less than 4 times a number. So 1 less than 4 times a number is 2 less than 3 times a number. So there's my equation. Draw my line down, box in my x's. This has bigger, left side has bigger x's, so I'm going to move my 3x by subtracting it. So I get 1x minus 1 equals negative 2. I'm going to add 1 to both sides, and so when I do, I get 1x equals negative 1. 22, I'm going to find the mean absolute deviation. So my first step is to find the mean. I'm going to add those up and divide by 5, and I get the mean is 5. So now I'm going to subtract 5 from each one. So that's finding the difference. And remember, it's the absolute value of the difference. So I'm going to subtract 5 from each one. So I get 2, 3, 3, 2, and 0. Now I find the MAD by finding the mean of those differences. So I'm going to add these up, and I'm going to get 10, and then I divide by how many there are, which is 5. So my MAD is going to be 2. And that's it for your review. Good luck studying and good luck on your CBA.